Um, First on the agenda is a review of the minutes from our December 6th meeting.
Do we need a roll call? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Do we need or Allison, do we need a roll call? I see it on the agenda here.
Well, is there any discussion about the minutes? I mean, I have
No,
one.
I'll move. Sorry.
I have one thing. I think we did talk about the subcommittee. That was the PR subcommittee. There were 4 people. There was no mention of the subcommittee in the minutes. I think it should be included. And given the success of this program, I think the committee should meet.
Yeah, there is a reference to the subcommittee on item 2 of the meeting minutes, or a subcommittee, the public relations subcommittee.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. I take it
Yes,
back.
Chair Levinson appointed Larry Chu to serve on the subcommittee to review public messaging on use
Right.
of Measure B funds along with himself, that's you, and members Holmes and Popovich.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I missed that. I think we do need to take attendance. So
Right.
Allison, I think you need to do a roll call.
Okay, committee member Chu. I see here.
Larry?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
Oh.
there we go. Thank you. Committee member Holmes.
Here.
Committee member Hull. Here. Committee member McClure. And I see you there. You're just muted at this time. Committee member Popovich. Committee member Slot.
Here.
Committee member Teed.
Here.
Chair Levinson.
Here.
So committee members Sang and Popovich are absent.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion about the minutes? If not, I guess we do have to do a roll call.
Thank you. I'll run through quickly. Committee member Chu.
Aye.
Committee member Holmes.
Yes.
Committee member Hull.
Yes.
Committee member McClure.
Here.
Committee member Slot.
Aye.
Committee member Teed.
Here.
Chair Levinson.
Yes. Okay. Number 3 on our agenda is to get an update on the roadway rehabilitation program. And everybody, I believe, got an email today with that report.
Yes, thank you, Julian Skinner, the Public Works Director. I do have a short report. Again, we were last met in December. So I've got a small update here from news that has occurred since that time. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So the cover sheet here is just a couple of updated photos for some of the Measure B projects that are actually underway right now. Starting on the right, that's the paving of the Hillview neighborhood. So the paving of those streets is funded by Measure B, but that work's being included with the storm drain project, which is not Measure B funded. But we pulled those streets out from the paving project so we could get the storm drains installed. Once they were all installed and tested and passed, we've then been able to go ahead and pave. And I believe they just finished up the last section of paving today. So now they'll wait a week or so for the asphalt to cure and come back and do the stenciling and any striping on those streets and raise the manholes up to finished grade. And then the Hillview work will be complete as far as the paving goes. And then the photo on the left is of the downtown ADA project. So they're starting with the concrete work, removing and replacing all the sidewalk, putting it back so it meets ADA requirements. When all the concrete is place, they'll come back and do the paving. That's from King to Ward. We're probably going to either pave that on a Sunday, or if their schedule works out, maybe during school's spring break. But as you know, it's a very busy stretch of street and it's pretty narrow. So we'll have to do something out of the ordinary as far as paving that stretch goes. And as of now, they're looking at end of March, maybe going into April. There are some delivery issues. We've all heard about supply chain issues around the world. We've got some tree grates and things like that that we're waiting for. They're all blocked out now, so they're not holding up any of the work, but they will. They have the potential to hold up the actual final completion. We can go ahead. It won't stop the paving work. Again, here's our kind of overall map that we always show that shows the progress through the work. The streets with a gray cloud over them have been paved already under the Measure B program. The streets that are in the orange are streets that are scheduled for paving this summer, part of what we call Group 4. We are pulling out a couple of sections, and we'll do them separately. As I mentioned, paving Magnolia is a bit of a challenge due to the traffic volumes. So where Magnolia was included in Group 4 initially to be paved this summer, we're still going to pave it this summer, but it will be its own project so that the contractor that paves Magnolia can focus on Magnolia and focus on all the traffic control requirements that we're going to have, and so that we have a better chance of having that paving work done during the school break this summer, rather than grouping it in with all the other streets and running the risk that something happens with the schedule. So most of the residential streets you see there will be paved as part of Group 4 this summer. Magnolia will be paved this summer while school's out. Doherty will be paved probably late summer. We have to wait for the PG&E undergrounding project to finish before we can get out and pave that. And we're going to do a couple of other safe pathways, sidewalk and bike lane improvements with that project that's funded by a grant when we pave Doherty. So we've pulled Doherty out, and it won't be part of the Group 4 either. So those are 3 components to streets that were to be paved this summer that are going to be broken into 3 separate projects. But as long as PG&E finishes their work on time, we'll still be paving Doherty this summer. The streets that are highlighted in yellow are, well, 2 of them are under construction that I already spoke about, the central portion of Magnolia and then Hillview. The other section here is East Sir Francis Drake. That project is out to bid currently. So contractors are looking at those plans at the moment, and we'll be coming back to council in a month or so with the bids to start that project. And then there's one outlier here that's still to be scheduled. That's Old Redwood Highway. As you may have noticed, Caltrans is implementing a TAM project at the moment, constructing a bike and pedestrian pathway over Corte Madera Creek that starts over at East Sir Francis Drake and then lands down on Redwood Highway. The city has a project to continue that bike path down to the pedestrian overcross that goes over 101. So we're going to wait for all of those projects to be complete before we pave Redwood. So Old Redwood Highway will likely be the last street that we pave in the Measure B program, and that's currently scheduled probably for next summer if all of the bike path projects over there are completed on time. And then this is kind of the tabular form of our project tracking. This shows each of the projects and what was in the Measure B plan for those projects, what we've spent to date, and then our best estimate of what it's going to cost to complete those streets. This hasn't been updated since your last meeting, so it still shows that we're trending about 1.8 million under budget at the moment. Fingers crossed, prices are going up on everything everywhere, and we've got a lot of work to do this summer. Hopefully that trend continues, but we'll know within a month or two once our bids are out and we get pricing back. Here's a detailed breakdown of kind of the projects that I mentioned were still to come. That's the estimated cost, 12.4 million of projects to be completed in this last year. Some of them are already underway. The crosswalk enhancements have already started. Magnolia ADA that I showed a photograph of, that came in under budget. The Measure A, the Measure B estimate for that was 1.8 million. It came in at 1.3. Rule 20A is underway. There's a small amount of Measure B that was included there to supplement all the PG&E funds. Eastern Francis Drake out to bid. These are kind of in order that we'll anticipate them to go out to bid. Shady Lane is probably the next one that'll go out to bid, but we can't pave that till late summer because of owls in that neighborhood. But the design in that is it's all ready to go out to bid. And then Magnolia will come first, so we can guarantee that we get it in that school break slot over the summer. And then Measure B Group 4, followed by Doherty Drive when PG&E is finished. And then we've got the pathway to finish up on Elm Drive. So those are all of your remaining Measure B projects. The Group 4 project still includes the dollar amount in there for Redwood, although we'll pull Redwood out and do it the following year. But that 12.4 million work left to be done does include that portion of Redwood that I mentioned will probably get bumped out. So that's a little update of everything that's happened since we last met in December. So I'm available if anybody has any questions or any more information on any of these projects.
Any questions or discussion? I just want to say that I live on Tulane in Hillview. In the last 3 or 4 weeks between the storm drain project on Harvard and repaving of Tulane, Cornell, and Harvard, our quiet little neighborhood has had this incredible array of heavy machinery and trucks going by all the time. And all the little kids out in the street just enjoying the heck out of it. But I just want to comment on Gelati. These guys really have done a great job, and they really work really hard. So clearly, I think we're getting our money's worth from the bids we do. They seem to be very committed to the work, and that includes people from the top to the people who are, moving the shovels. So it's been a pleasure to watch Measure B in action in your front yard. So it's been very good. Any other comments by anybody? Okay, I would just like to ask staff in the future to please make sure that these reports are included in the packet that we all get, and also posted with all the other material for the public to review. These reports, I think, are very rich in the material of which we're committed to doing. And I think the public has a right to see it and not inadvertently miss it because it came out a day or two late. Okay, item number 4, recommendation to City Council for use of Measure B funds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very briefly for the committee, as of right now, my only recommendation is to authorize payment on the debt service that's associated with the Measure B program, and asking for your committee to concur in that recommendation. Then the next item we'll talk about will be other recommendations we eventually need to discuss and take to the council. But for now, I recommend we only allocate for making our debt service payment.
Does that put us in any risk at all in terms of being able to complete all the projects?
Well, Measure B doesn't pay for the projects, the debt does, so the bonds that we took out do. So no, it doesn't in any way.
Dan, I have a question, a couple of questions. Looking at the budget report, the attachment, I wasn't sure. Could you tell me what the difference is between period activity and fiscal activity, columns, 3 and 4? Maybe if you could just kind of go through that, and then I see there's a variance and percentage remaining.
I'm sorry, James, I will have to get that answer for you from the Administrative Services Director.
No, I just wondered.
I don't use this particular report very much, so I don't know what period activity versus fiscal activity is.
I was just trying to understand it because I have an idea somewhere along the line it means the amount of revenue that's come in, but 211,498 because it says investment earnings and sales tax. So I think that's the revenue that has come in, but I wasn't sure about the fiscal activity and then the variance favorable, unfavorable. So trying to understand what that means.
This particular report, the period activity shows the sales tax revenue fiscal year to date. So when you see 51% there, the rest of the revenue has not come in yet for the year.
And that 51% is the period remaining, that the period of time for which the revenue hasn't come in.
Well, there's no period remaining. There's a percent remaining.
I just wonder what a percent of what?
The percent of the budget, the percent of the budget.
Oh, a percent of the budget. I
Yeah.
see.
So really what you see here is about 49% of the budgeted revenue has come in for the year.
I see.
And what's the difference between page 1, 2, and 3? They look almost identical. Did I miss something there?
Which page is that? Let's see.
It's the budget report. On the very bottom, after the whole page of the net debt service, the next 3 pages, the account summary. Oh, it says account summary, group summary, and fund summary. They're all the same. Does that mean anything or?
No, I apologize, Mr. Chair. I had the Administrative Service Director run this and send it to the clerk and just pushed it out. So the next time we'll just give you 1 page.
Okay, so there wasn't anything that we need to be concerned about. Okay.
One other question, Dan, in connection with your recommendation. Do I understand you to be recommending that this coming fiscal year there will not be any administrative costs deducted?
No, I apologize, James. I view it as there's a blanket authorization to pay all the administrative charges to the sales tax auditor. But if you want, I'll make sure that's always included in the future in the recommendation.
Yeah, because it says make debt service payments, and so then the administrative costs. I believe we mentioned this last time. And the administrative cost is what is that? This particular administrative cost? I know it's not a custody fee like the other one, but
it's a percentage. It's a percentage of the revenue that the auditors had to go collect because it hadn't been properly collected. So they get a recovery fee for that. I think the current contract is 15% of what they recover.
So is that's basically what in the previous ledger report it referred to as fee to HDL. Is that what that is going to be in the foreseeable future?
Yes.
Okay, so your recommendation would be that we authorize debt service payments plus the administrative fee to HDL.
Well, it would be to concur in my recommendation to the council. Yeah.
And are there any other administrative fees or deductions other than the HDL one that you anticipate?
I don't anticipate any other administrative fees, but from time to time, there may be charges that come up that should be charged to Measure B.
And could you give an example?
I'd have to go look, James, but presumably the trustee occasionally charges us fees too. So I have to go look and see how we're paying the trustee for the bonds.
I thought the trustee fee came out of, and I could be wrong, but I thought the trustee fee came out of the amount that we have on deposit for the proceeds fund, as opposed to the Measure B fund.
I'll double check. I don't have an answer for you.
I thought my understanding was it was kind of a custody fee, and that's what. But anyway, I'm just trying to get a sense of what kinds of so we have a specific sense of what administrative fees would be encompassed within the recommendation that you are asking us to concur in.
We have only ever charged our special funds for fees that relate to the financial management by outside vendors of those funds. So I can't totally, I'm just speculating without pulling up records to tell you what those charges may or may not be. The most common one is for the auditor who chases down delinquent payments and finds errors in the state system where we didn't get paid properly.
Right. I'm looking at last year's ledger report. I'm trying to find it. It says HDL, and then it does say there's a reference here to well, I mean, it was previously called a fee for revenue audit, and then the reference was changed to fee to HDL. But I did see then in here something called well, I can't read it. I mean, transfer for debt service, of course, is for the debt service, but somewhere along the line, I saw something else. So I was just
so fee to revenue audit was when we had a different vendor, and we negotiated a better deal when we went to HDL, and basically we keep 10% more than we used to.
Right, I remember you mentioned that. Yeah, now, and now I see something called transfer to cover fee to state of California, and then
that's a one-time charge that state charges when you have a revenue measure, though. So that one shouldn't be a recurring fee. But that's the type of thing we charge back to the measure because we got charged the fee because of the measure.
Oh, I see. The other one that I was looking for was administrative fee for bonds. It was $3,844.25. That was charged in 6/1/21. So
Yeah,
I don't know what that is.
That's a fee to the trustee, to the bank that administers the bonds.
Okay, so I guess you do charge some sort of a trustee fee to the account.
And I just couldn't tell you if there's one scheduled for the next fiscal year. I don't know.
So Dan, I have a question. You're recommending that any excess funds go to the storm drain program?
Well, I had that as the next item because you had, as a committee, had asked that we have that as a discussion item for this meeting. and then bring it back to a special meeting in June.
Okay, well, because you mentioned it here, so I get it.
I think I just wanted to paint a picture of where I
Okay.
think we're going.
So this is an action item, I believe. And you want us to support your recommendation, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any more discussion about this before I ask for a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, James, I didn't answer your second question about what the period activity is. If you look at the upper right-hand corner of the report, it's for the month ending January 31st, 2022. So what you
Okay,
see
thank you.
there, what you see there for, whatever dollar amount is in there is what they received in sales tax revenue for that month.
Great, thanks.
Any other comments or questions?
Where's the storm drain money coming from? What pocket, what?
So on the next item, we were going to talk about the money that's in the fund balance above the debt service payment.
Is that?
And
would go
my recommendation to the council is that we start to invest in the storm drains.
Okay, but what we're voting on is your recommendation that
To make the debt service
fund
payment.
the debt service. So really,
Yeah.
it's that first sentence
I understand.
in the bold that we are voting on. The rest we'll be discussing in the next item. So,
Well, I would move to get since we actually don't have much choice except to pay the debt service payments, but I would move that Measure B fund be used to make the debt service payments plus trustee fees plus audit fees.
Well, I that's fine because you're just making a recommendation. I mean, I'm still going to pay whatever fees I need to pay that are part of Measure B. It's not. It's you can enumerate those too, but there may be others, James. I don't know.
is there a second of that motion?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion before us? Can I have a roll call, please?
Committee Member Chu,
Aye.
Committee Member Holmes,
Aye.
Committee Member Hull,
Aye.
Committee Member McClure,
Yes.
Committee Member Slot,
Aye.
Committee Member Teed. I apologize, I missed that. Committee Member Teed.
Aye.
Chair Levinson.
Yes, aye. Okay, move on to item 5. Dan, this is you again.
Yeah, so this is meant to be a discussion item based on the direction at your December 6th meeting, which was to continue to monitor what's going on with the fund and to start the conversation about what the reserve should be so that we can then start a conversation about what to do with excess revenue above the reserve. As I point out in the report, we're trending so that we think toward the end of the fiscal year, we'll close with roughly 3.5 million in the fund. That's after we've made the debt service payments. So, I think it's actually reaching a critical point to establish some sort of reserve and put more of this money to work on behalf of the taxpayers. It's not, in my mind, appropriate to keep accumulating cash in the fund. So the question that I've asked of the committee is what your feeling is about establishing a reserve. Having studied the trends now for a while, I think we can comfortably operate with a reserve that's 50% of 1 year's payment. Though it might make sense, and people like round numbers, to round up to $1 million as the reserve policy. When we built the Measure B financing program, we had our team do a model on debt service payments of 1.6 million. And as you've heard from Julian, that's proven sufficient for him to do the entire road rehabilitation program. So for the balance of the years that we're making debt service payments, we need to have 1.6 million. Our sales tax auditors and consultants feel pretty comfortable we're always going to hit that mark unless there's a catastrophic collapse of the economy. So in light of that, I feel even more confident in recommending that the reserve level should be 50% of 1 year's payment. But I know there was some hesitation about that on the committee, and admittedly, a few years ago, I was thinking we should have an entire year's payment in reserve. But now that we have more trend data, I'm feeling more confident in how this fund is performing. I would note, before I open it up for discussion from the committee, because of the unique nature of transaction and use tax, and I tried to highlight this in the last paragraph, Measure B is almost performing equal to our base sales tax, even though it's for a lesser amount in terms of percentage on sales. And that's because of the fact that one, Measure B is applied to automobile sales, regardless of where you buy the automobile, as long as it's in California. And two, Measure B is being applied to online sales, and that comes directly to us. Whereas online sales for the base sales tax go into a pool and get distributed by formula. That should continue. We will probably continue to see Measure B at 3/4 cent performing very close to our base, particularly given the makeup of Larkspur's brick and mortar operations. As you get into the weeds of what generates sales tax in Larkspur, you realize that our online sales base is going to probably continue to shore up our revenue streams. With that, Mr. Chair, this is a chance for the committee to ask questions or talk about the issue of establishing a reserve policy.
I agree. I think that's enough and it should be established.
Could you remind the committee about what things the money can be used for besides the roads and storm drains?
The money isn't, so Measure B is not legally restricted, but between the ballot language and the council's general direction, there's been an emphasis on roadways, paths of travel, accessibility, and storm drains are on the list, I believe, and then general health and safety infrastructure is on the list as well.
What is
So what happened to the fire engine?
And so that's in our health and safety category, but the fire engine was actually paid for with Measure C. That was the previous measure.
So that's done with.
That's done with.
Does emphasis mean all of it?
The council had originally set a target of that the percentage of the expenditures would be for roads, but that was it didn't make as much sense when we went to the debt service arrangement. Now that the debt service has done the road rehabilitation, the question is what to do with all the additional revenue that's coming in above 1.6 million.
So to date, the money's all been spent on roads.
Well, the Measure B money's been spent on the debt, and then the debt's been spent on the road.
Yeah, okay, I got it. You're right.
Yeah.
Dan?
Yeah.
Hi, so I'm kind of new to the committee, and maybe this is already discussed earlier, but what's the interest rate on the debt service of the bond?
I don't have it off the top of my head. It's net across the entire life. It's like 3.2, but don't hold me to that. I gotta look it up. It's in
So
that
I'm not necessarily advocating it, but is one of the possibilities the use of the surplus funds is to pay down the debt service early?
So once we've finished with the road rehabilitation process, then we need to go to the council and say, what do you want to do with the excess proceeds? So the proceeds are usable for any public infrastructure. So the council has two choices. They could do that. They could essentially pay down the debt, they give it back, not draw it, which is what the police council did when we built the police headquarters on Doherty Drive. We actually gave back about $2 million. But given how cheap that money is, the other options to discuss whether it makes sense to invest it in infrastructure, given especially inflation is probably going to make the price of borrowing a lot higher.
Yeah, no, I agree. We've got that
Shortly.
locked in, and I think, but I just wanted to know what the mechanism was, if that's even a possibility.
Yeah, it'll be a council. The council will have to, sift through what they want to do. But it's hard
But if
not
that-
to think about putting it to work.
If that 3% is locked into the life of the bond, then it definitely makes sense to
Yeah,
put
and
it
I'd be
to work.
happy, we should talk, because I know the rest of the committees had the presentation of sort of how the debt structure works, and be happy to take you through that at some point.
Oh, okay, thank you. I will take you up on that.
And can the funds be used to support the library? That whole
So,
projects in some way, like doing infrastructure or something to,
yes, it could. That's an option. It hasn't been one that the council's necessarily wanted to do, because to date, the council's placed an emphasis on Measure B being investment in needed infrastructure versus wanted infrastructure. So, but with the library project potentially needing additional funds to match a state grant, that might be something they want to talk about.
I might be able to give you a little bit of color. It goes back probably 20 plus years now. The funding of the library has always been identified as coming from private funds. And the council over the years has never really wavered far from, that position. But what we did identify back around 2000 was the fact that at that time, the physical infrastructure of the drains was 50 years old, and now it's 70. So we got about 15 miles of storm drains, mostly the old corrugated steel type stuff that's in a pretty bad state of deterioration. And, when people don't see it, it's hard to get the attention of the public to have, say, funding or to create funding for it. So this particular mechanism is a way to fund that with an existing measure that has already been passed to rehabilitate existing infrastructure.
Dan, a question. In your second paragraph of your staff report, you said HDL is projecting that the fiscal year 22-23 will be approximately 2.7 million. When was that projection made? Do you know? I mean, what month or how long ago?
They gave it to me about 10 days ago.
Oh, okay. I just wondered, it seems like we keep having some sort of debacle, like, not we, but we've had a plague and now we have potential war. So I just wondered whether that kind of thing is taken into account. But a couple of other questions I have. And maybe I should have asked this of the public. I should have asked this. Anyway, what about maintenance? I know that there has been talk about as we come to the end of the 5-year paving period, then we'll have to, and Julian has mentioned this a couple times, then we'll have to go into a maintenance mode. And so I wonder if thought has also been given to the idea of having to use a certain portion of that to keep the maintenance up.
So when we built the debt service model, we were very concerned about how we would make sure that we did maintenance properly on our investment. And so at that time, Julian's model suggested, what was that, Julian, like 5 years ago, we did that model. So it suggested we need about $1 million a year. So that would be $1 million in like 2017 dollars, not that far off from today. And we have a number of other sources of revenue that are going to fund the maintenance program. But if those revenue sources start to dwindle, then we may need to talk about Measure B shoring up that amount that we need for maintenance, because we don't want to lose our investment. And in particular, the one that gives me a little bit of pause is the gas tax, because we have two pressures on the gas tax right now. One is electric vehicles, and they haven't yet figured out how they're going to tax electric vehicle owners for road impact. And then the second issue is what you're seeing in the headlines right now, whether or not the state might temporarily suspend or reduce the gas tax will have an effect. So that's the one of about 4 pooled resources that we were going to use to fund our annual maintenance program, James. And that's the one that probably we'll be watching most closely. And we could, not this year, but in a few years, we might have to say some of Measure B's revenue above the debt service should go into the maintenance program.
That kind of bleeds into my last question, and that is, if I understood the memo correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed to indicate that the storm drain project really is not underway yet, and that the initial phase is this survey, and that it's anticipated to develop $10 to $20 million possibility of work to be done. But if money was transferred over out of the Measure B fund, wouldn't it just be going into another fund to sit? And if that's the case, does it make much difference at this stage in the game whether it sits in the Measure B fund or whether it sits in the storm drain fund?
So the I think the thing is that we do project-based accounting in public works. So Julian's team needs to know if they have a commitment of revenue so that they can then go out and seek engineers' estimates for the projects. So we don't do any of that until we know we have funding sources. So it's all our cash, whichever fund it's sitting in, but unless it's dedicated to the storm drain program, we, by practice and policy, we can't say we have a funded project. So that would be the reason we need to ask the council to make a budget commitment that it can be moved. Functionally, we don't move money into projects from the other funds that they're sitting in until we take them out to bid and we're actually doing the projects. So from a pure accounting standpoint, the money would sit in the Measure B fund until it was actually needed. And in fact, to get way in the weeds, typically finance pays all the bills out of the general pool, the general fund cash pool, and then they just reimburse the cash pool for whatever got paid. So if you really want to get down in the weeds, it'll sit in the Measure B fund until it actually has to move.
Right. Okay. That's and can the city do much of anything by way of engineers' estimates or other things until, or does it plan to do really anything in advance of the conclusion of the storm drain survey? And when is it anticipated that the storm drain survey will conclude?
So a couple of things. We actually have started the program now because we already know about crisis level problems with the storm drain system. And what we've been doing to fund it is using the federal money, the American Rescue Plan money. So we just got approval to do that recently. And so Julian's already started doing some of these like one-offs that we know those are failing. But one-offs are not a system, and we need to have a systematic approach. So the study is so we can have an approach as close to what we did with the road rehabilitation program as possible, where we have a rating system and we're targeting the investments so that we're getting the fastest return on what we're doing. Storm drains aren't the roads though, because the deterioration factors are different. And Julian's online, so if he wants to jump in and talk engineering speak, he can about what that means. But it's not like the roads where we were able to show you the model and say, you know, every day we don't do this, we're going down a certain ranking and we're down at a certain PCI. And if we don't get it up to a certain PCI, we can't really maintain it. It's kind of more of, we've got a bunch of failed stuff. We need to go find it and fix it. So then to finish answering your question, James, we just recently, I think, got word that Ross Valley Sand District can resume its camera program, and they're doing their sewers first, and then they're going to finish doing our storm drains for us. Is that right, Julian?
Yes, well, they're going to intermix, but they will be prioritizing their system. But yeah, so.
And the reason for that was they weren't being allowed to use water to flush the pipes, and they have to flush the pipes to take the pictures. So now that the water district's letting them use water again, they can flush the pipes again.
So we had talked last time about not wanting to make a formal recommendation to the council until June, when the May bids came in. And so everybody at that point would be comfortable that there'd be enough money to complete all the projects. And that may be more of an issue now because of what's going on just in the world, as well as inflation and oil and who knows what. Is there any reason why we have to make a decision today, or does it still make sense to you that we wait, have a special meeting in June after the bids are all in, and we can see the full picture, and then we might all feel more comfortable with a specific allocation recommendation?
Yeah, that is all fine. And I wasn't asking for an action today. I plan to just tell the council we're going to establish a reserve. The committee would like an opportunity to weigh in on what the reserve level should be. And we were waiting for the May bids before we did that. And I think that'll work fine. So.
And I guess I would also, I know we paid for one fire engine. Is there another one coming up that we should think about, paying for? I mean,
so now that we've effectively merged our fire department with Corte Madera, so the way we're financing fire equipment's different now because we're sharing it with Corte Madera. So sort of, maybe yes, but not exactly. It's kind of the answer.
I get it. Let them pay for
it. Well, we just have to share the cost a little differently now.
Okay.
So.
Any other comments or questions at this point? Because I believe our plan is to have a meeting in June after all the bids are in for all the major projects, and then make a specific recommendation at that time. Is everybody on the committee comfortable with doing that?
Yes, I think that's prudent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a date in June that we decided on? Because I couldn't find it anywhere.
No, after this meeting, I'll have Allison contact everybody and find a date. It looks like Mondays seem to work well for folks, so yeah, we'll probably be looking at Mondays in June.
Okay, and obviously we should try to be flexible, because if the bids come in a little late or whatever, let's schedule the meeting after all the bids come in.
Julie, you're not going to let the bids come in late, right?
No, actually, the The sooner the better, even if some of the projects are later this year. Typically, the earlier you get the bids in, you get better pricing, so hopefully they won't slide.
Okay,
And this won't in any way affect some of our other infrastructure plans because we have, for several of our programs, we do have projects in the pipeline. So Julian needs this time anyway to get a lot of that going. So this timeline's fine for us.
do we have a public at all? Allison?
I'm looking at our audience list. We don't have any members of the public joining us at the Zoom meeting. We also didn't receive any emailed comments from the public.
Okay. It's a time for, open time for committee members. If anybody has anything that they want to contribute or ask or say, that's not on the agenda.
I had one thing is just to let you know that the council's going to go to hybrid meetings in April. And then each board, commission, and committee will have to talk about whether they want to meet in person or meet in some sort of mix of in-person and online. And then by then we'll understand the Brown Act rules around online meetings after the pandemic's no longer called a pandemic. It's, for those of you who've been around a while, in the old days with a telephone meeting, you had to post where you were on the door and you had to let the public in if you, and as of right now, that's what the law says we have to go back to even with Zoom, but there's talk in Sacramento of changing that. So Zoom's really convenient for a lot of us, but at the same time, meeting in person has its own merits. So that'll be part of what we'll figure out and poll everybody's comfort individually about that.
Okay. Anything else?
So the 3
Dan,
million.
I just want to say I appreciate, I was fascinated by this attachment, this HDL attachment, sales tax update, and the highlights and the 25 producers. Well, one of them's gone out of business, brewing company. But that was fascinating information. Maybe it might be included with some of our other attachments too.
We could do
Anybody
that.
else? Anyone else?
So what the $3 million that's surplus and accumulating right now, that will stay there for the
Until we adopt a policy, and then we'll talk about recommendations for the excess money.
Where's the
Did you-
reserve going to come from? Just from
Sorry,
the reserve fund that we're going to establish? That's just going to come from
out of that balance.
ongoing.
Out of that. It'll come out of that balance
Oh,
that we have built up now.
okay. Good.
Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So move.
Motion adjourned.
All right. I think we can trust that everybody's going to vote for adjournment. So let's adjourn. Thank you all very much.
You.
Speak to you all again in
Thank you.
June.
Thank you,
Dan,
everybody.
I'll reach out to you to learn
Thank
more
you.
about the bonds.
Sounds good, Carl.
Thank you.
Okey-doke.
All right.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
See you next time.
Bye.